Hello everyone, this is part 62 of What If Naruto and Hinata trained together and a spark happened, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. I wondered who was making such a large ruckus in my home, the Raikage said, his obvious annoyance covering mild amusement, which in turn rested over a current of genuine anger. Guki-sensei, Nagato sounded mildly chagrined as he bowed his head as deeply as he could to his teacher. Naruto, Hinata, and Sakura closed ranks around the weakened shinobi, and Uzumaki drew his staff blade. Their reactions cooled his ire, and shifted his thoughts towards the younger renegade. Guki shook his head and chuckled sadly. Nagato has nothing to fear from me, Namikaze told the Leaf teens. He looked past them and addressed his junior, I see your control rods are gone, and you seem to be leaving. Have you decided to join Conan in exile? I have, sensei, the Rinnegan user answered respectfully, I have been reminded that my responsibility to her predates our apprenticeship to you. Or maybe I should just say that I love her, and I want to live for her. I'm sorry to see you go, Guki smiled at the younger man, but you are my friend and ally, not my prisoner. I won't stop you. Rather, I wish you both the best. The group started to move again, and suddenly Siphon appeared in Guki's hand, and he pointed the axe at Naruto. Nagato and his acolytes may leave, if they go alone, the Raikage stated darkly, but that does not apply to the three of you. Sensei, Nagato sounded surprised. They have invaded my city, and stolen you, Guki explained, and unless I miss my guess, they are also responsible for Madara Uchiha's deaths. Madara. Now it was Naruto's turn to sound confused. How did you know that? Hinata asked softly, causing Naruto and Nagato both to stare at her in amazement. I placed a tracking seal on him, Namikaze answered, I knew the instant it vanished. You understand that I can't allow this to go unredressed? Guki queried his student. I understand why you feel that way, but given the situation, I'm not sure I can agree with you, sensei. Nagato denied Guki his approval, and I will not leave without them. Just go, Naruto countered, I've been wanting to have a conversation with this guy, and you'll just be in everyone's way. For once I agree with Naruto-kun, Namikaze nodded. In that case, can I provide him with some additional escort? Naruto asked, both to help Nagato, and in case your followers disagree with your decision. Guki inclined his head, and Naruto beat his fingers. Beside him, Hinata did the same. Both lovers pressed a palm to the ground. Summoning jutsu, Uzumaki and Hyuga intoned in chorus. Sakura frowned at the younger woman, even as Gamakichi, Gamatatsu, Sol, and Lune appeared in the space behind Nagato and his acolytes. The sibling squirrels looked mildly confused at their resummoning. The toads looked at all of the potential opponents, and tensed for battle. What's up, Naruto? The darker-colored amphibian asked carefully. Kichi, I need you and Tatsu to escort Nagato and his bodyguards out of the Cloud Village, Naruto said, and you guys might need to carry him, he's pretty weak. Sol, Lune, will you two please accompany them as scouts? Hinata asked kindly. The albino rodent nodded broadly. So, Nagato's the stick figure guy. Gamakichi prompted again, and a hint of sadness flashed across Guki's eyes. I'm afraid that I am, the Rinnegan bearer agreed. Great, climb on. The horse-sized toad crouched down lower, and the female acolyte Sara helped Nagato secure a spot on Kichi's back. Sol, Lune, you know where to take them, right? Sakura asked, her statement indicating an individual rather than a location. Yup, we know the drill, the male squirrel answered. Guki stepped aside to allow the bizarre procession to leave the Raikage's home. But he kept a careful eye on the teenage members of Team Kakashi, ready to pounce if they tried to escape. But none of the younger shinobi made a move, until the doors closed behind them, and the shouts of the surprised Shizokas disappeared. You really think you can take the three of us? Naruto asked his uncle confidently, I mean, numbers aside, it sounds like Hinata and Sakura just an immortal. And if you were all in peak condition, it might give me pause, Namikaze admitted, but Sakura-chan has a lump on the back of her head the size of a chicken's egg. Both ladies have a number of minor C, Hinata-chan more so than Sakura-chan. And while you appear physically unharmed, the damage to your uniform would indicate you were in a fight recently, so, like your teammates, you must have expended at least some of your physical and spiritual energy. He brandished Siphon lazily, and smiled at the teens, earnestly with a hint of condescension. So yes, I think I can take all three of you, he concluded. He tapped his right toes against the stone floor, and then he vanished. Guki reappeared next to Naruto, swinging his axe at the younger man's neck. Hinata started to call out a warning, but her lover was already raising Kitsune to intercept. Sakura hopped back, drawing and releasing an arrow while still in midair. Even as Siphon clanged against the staff blade, the Reikage took his left hand off the weapon. Redirection jutsu, Namikaze stated without signing. He twisted his body slightly, and as Sakura's arrow approached him, he moved his free hand above the projectile. Even with only one hand, the pressure he placed on Uzumaki forced the Tokujo to move his offhand to Kitsune's hilt as well. As the missile passed under Guki's hand, he turned his arm and body further, and the arrow followed as if stuck to his inverted palm. He buried his right foot in Naruto's ribs, as he completed his rotation. Guki released the arrow from his jutsu, and it flew at Hinata with the same velocity it had had when he caught it. Hinata squeaked in surprise, ending the jutsu she had been forming. She quickly crossed her arms in the path of Sakura's redirected missile, and braced herself. The arrow scraped off Ginmaki with a metallic whine, and was deflected into one of the nearby pillars. And in spite of her preparations, the force of blow knocked the silver-eyed Kunoichi onto her B. Naruto skidded to a halt next against one of the stone columns, wheezing as his broken ribs started knitting back into the correct shape and position. Despite the regenerating injury, he sent chakra into Kitsune to form its wind chakra blade and charged his uncle. Once his kick cleared Uzumaki from his immediate path, Guki turned his focus to Hinata, who was still in the process of falling backwards. He once again moved forward with speed even the Hyuga heiress could barely track, and lifted Siphon for a broad swipe at her legs. Ninja arts, find me jutsu, Sakura drew two arrows at once and fired at Namikaze. As they left the bow, the missiles seemed to split, but into a much larger mass of bolts than a simple arrow shadow clone jutsu. Most of the 200 arrows flying at Guki and Hinata were illusionary, but mixed in with the real and fictional projectiles were around 36 shadow arrows. The swarm made Guki pause long enough for Hinata to plant her hands and spin her body upwards. 8 trigrams souls, heavenly spin, the pale beauty intoned, expelling chakra from her feet. The Reikage brought his axe down, and the red ribbon of metal in the blade glowed as it s through the jutsu. The swath carved out of the heavenly spin prevented it from hitting his chest and face, but the technique still hit Guki's belly, legs, and arms, throwing him clear of the archery barrage. Though he escaped the two Kunoichi, his flight method tossed the rogue unsteadily into the path of Naruto. The blonde teen s his Fuyuten blade at his uncle's spine. The renegade twisted his shoulder almost out of joint, and managed to catch the sword against the flat of his axe. Namikaze pushed back, turning to face the Tokujo as his feet touched down again. He swung shallowly at Naruto's chest, and Uzumaki blocked with his enhanced staff blade. Siphon flared again, and see right through the wind chakra extension, before being stopped by the metal shaft. Guki spun Siphon up, catching Kitsune under the flare of his axe's head. He yanked down quickly, and Naruto was not prepared for the sudden switch in direction. The staff blade and the axe both dropped, and Namikaze took his right hand off the weapon, thrusting his palm at the teen's chest. As the strike hit, Naruto exploded into a cloud of cherry blossoms. Release, Guki announced, and then caught Kitsune on Siphon's hilt just before the blow from the concealed Tokujo hit his left temple. He pushed the pole weapon away, and rotated his entire body, aiming his battle axe at Hinata's stomach as the younger woman once again entered melee range. Her coat prevented him from seeing her, but once again she was put off balance. This time the pale beauty used the momentum, lifting her right leg and dropping her heel lightly on his knee. She put her weight onto his leg and jabbed her other knee into his right elbow. Then she pushed off with both stems, and flipped back into position next to Naruto. Guki examined his right knee and elbow while the teens caught their breath. Neither was particularly damaged, but Hinata had blocked one tenketsu in each joint. To be able to use the gentle fist with that level of precision with your legs is quite difficult, he observed with an odd hint of pride. I like your girlfriend, nephew. You don't get to call me that, Naruto snapped, too incensed to try to deny their connection. You abandoned your brother, your village. Kakashi and Iruka are my uncles. I don't know you from any other missing nin I've had to take down. I regret that I wasn't part of your life before now. Guki sounded genuine. If I had known Yukihana and Minato were dating, that they had a son. Yeah, but you're still trying to K me now, aren't you? Uzumaki shot back. I don't intend to K any of you. The rakeage sounded hurt. You should know that I do not K if I can avoid it. And my skills being what they are, I am really unable to avoid my opponents. You could have fooled me, Sakura interjected sarcastically. No, familial connections aside, you three are too valuable to K, Guki stated openly. Naruto's fame and popularity make him a critical asset in this war. If capture him it will demoralize the other side and hurt their alliances. And if I could turn him. That'll never happen, the blonde youth growled. So you said before, but never is a long time. And if I am holding both of your teammates as leverage. But your attacks have not been designed to incapacitate, Hinata shook her head, while objecting to Guki's assertion, trying to behead Naruto and disembowel me can hardly be called non-lethal. Siphon doesn't see flesh, if I don't want it to, Guki explained, illustrating by swinging the axe through his own arm. My strikes are designed to tire the three of you and relieve you of your remaining chakra. After that, taking you prisoner will be far easier. You're still getting ahead of yourself, Naruto counted smugly. Other than that one kick, you haven't hit us yet. That is true, the renegade leader admitted, but then, I haven't really been exerting myself yet. But I suppose, to be fair about this, I really shouldn't hold back. He hopped further away and started signing. His hands formed the noble animal seals with speed the teens had only seen when Kakashi Hatake was particularly serious or desperate. Inu, Tori, Guki finished the 40 signs in only 5 seconds, and then intoned, ninja art, clone brigade jutsu. The air around him exploded and 60 additional versions of the rakeage filled almost half of the previously expansive audience chamber. Big deal, Naruto scoffed, placing his hands together as the Guki copies all lifted their right arms into the air. Multi-shadow. Naruto, wait, Hinata implored him, grabbing his shoulder. Siphon, replication, Guki ordered, tossing dozens of loose kunai into the throng. Just over half of the clones caught a dagger, and as they did, the weapons turned into duplicates of the Senju clan's axe. Okay, yeah, that could have been bad for my chakra supply, Naruto agreed. That's not all, Hinata told her teammates, though I can't tell the difference anymore. I saw other materials mix in when the clones were forming. They aren't shadow clones. Some of them are, Guki admitted, impressed again, but for every shadow clone, there is also a regular clone, a water clone, a fire clone, an earth clone, and a lightning clone. 6 types of clones, 10 of each type. That is my clone brigade. 4 different types of elemental clones in one jutsu. Sakura protested, that's not possible. It is with the right Kekkei Genkai, Guki explained, and before you protest, I don't have the Rinnegan. But after I helped Nagato create the random elements clones jutsu, we reverse-engineered a more stable 4-element version that I could use. But it is one of my finishing moves, it is very difficult and takes most of my chakra. As if to illustrate the point, Namikaze took out one of the liquid food pills Nagato had provided him from the Akatsuki's small stockpile and swallowed it. The teens tensed to attack, but the Gukis all smiled sadly at him, as they started to circle around Team Kakashi. You three should be careful, he advised, hitting a lightning or fire clone would be very bad for you, and from what Hinata said, even the Byakugan can't tell the difference. The heiress nodded slowly, but Naruto just grinned. Yeah, well, we got this right Hinata. Uzumaki boasted, gesturing for Sakura to close ranks. The medic complied before the copies reached her, but her expression was doubtful. Naruto, Hinata's chakra is pretty low, and she can't take any more food pills today, Haruno informed her male teammate in a harsh whisper. That's fine, I usually cover the chakra requirements anyway, the blonde was undeterred, Hinata provides the eyes and the Byakugan threads. But in that case you better let us make contact, he said more seriously, while Hinata shifted her stance to press her back to his. Fighting back to back, Guki thought, unknowingly echoed by half of his clones, but it feels like I should be recognizing this. Some minor detail from Homura's reports that's escaping my memory. Ah, well, it can't be that important. Take them down, the original Namikaze ordered, but try not to hurt him too much. The clones charged forward, some remaining on the floor and a handful leaping so the teens could not escape to the ceiling. As his personal army moved in, Guki took a step back, his eyes focusing primarily on Archer, crouched beside her friends. And Hinata and Naruto both smiled, thankful that their opponents were attacking on more than one plane. Their heartbeats and breathing in unison, and the chakra networks linked, both lovers' hands snapped out. Double vision, they intoned softly, their speech matched as well, protection of the 8 trigrams, 224 palms. Sakura glanced up at the new incantation, and noticed Naruto's arms were moving faster than any previous time she had seen the defensive technique. Guki frowned in annoyance as half the front line of clones were down before their first steps landed. He had forgotten about the technique that had sealed the Hokage's decision to move Hinata to Team Kakashi, as the duo had only ever been reported using it in combat once. Water splashed, rock crumbled, and explosions of fire, lightning, and white smoke filled the area around the teens as the first dozen copies fell. Guki took a small comfort in the fact that the water and earth chakra facsimiles did not die from one hit, but took a concerted effort from Naruto or Hinata to bring down. Siphon units, see their threads. One of the duplicates called out, and the original cursed himself for not thinking of it first. A fire clone in the air lashed out with his version of the Senju weapon, destroying Hinata's left-hand projection before it hit him and absorbing its chakra. Guki nodded his approval, until Naruto's right-hand string struck the same copy, bursting him and releasing the axe. Another clone attempted the C-down Hinata's restored left-hand chakra stream, but the pale beauty subtly shifted her wrist and the thread twisted past the curved blade. The duplicate was struck in the forehead and transformed back into water. Sakura, why aren't you firing? Naruto asked curiously, and with a hint of accusation. I'm almost out of arrows, she answered tersely, her gaze following the real Guki. The fox-faced man tapped into his merged Byakugan sight, and counted 4 projectiles left in the container. I thought after you sent them back, Grandma Tsunade or Shizune Nichin refilled your empty quivers for you, he prompted, the annoyance in his voice switching to worry. They must have been too busy, Sakura matched his tone. Naruto, Hinata prompted anxiously. I got him, Uzumaki answered, turning his full focus back to the jutsu. His right palm shifted again, taking down the Guki copy that had managed to slip to within 10 feet of the Leaf Shinobi trio. He exploded in a blast of fire, and as he did, Naruto and Hinata's movements suddenly slowed. Only 5 of Guki's shadows remained, and they had all retreated to just outside the jutsu's range. They allowed the technique lapse, and their chakra networks naturally separated. Hinata immediately noticed that not only was her spiritual energy nearly full, she felt physically refreshed as well. Then she quit congratulating herself, seeing that Naruto's chakra had dropped considerably, and that he was panting slightly. Okay, so we're down to 6 against 3, Sakura noted, watching the Gukis and making sure not to lose track of the true Namikaze, except now they've each got 2 of those darned axes. I don't suppose you were paying attention when Grandma Tsunade showed us the K-switch jutsu for the siphon copies. Naruto queried hopefully. Of course I was, idiot, Sakura hissed, but the problem is, it requires close proximity. No more than 3 feet, Hinata answered before he could ask. Okay, you 2 take care of the axes left on the floor, and I'll get the remaining clones, he said, linking his fingers into a cross. Naruto, if the siphons hit your shadow clones, you won't get any of that chakra back, Hinata fully explained her earlier protest. But Naruto just grinned, and Sakura mouthed the word, left, thoughtfully. Don't worry, these guys are no problem. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 10 Narutos appeared around the trio, and immediately began to dart towards Guki's clones. But as they ran, each Naruto stooped and picked up 1 or 2 of the siphon copies. Guki's eyes widened, and Sakura could not keep from chuckling triumphantly. That doesn't matter, the first Guki clone he reached counted, but his bravado was forced, Battleaxe isn't even on your skill sheet. Even 2 on 1 you can't hope to keep up with me. But you know what is on my skill sheet. Naruto shot back, Staff Blade. My best weapon. And the principle of the Staff Blade style is adapting attacks from one weapon to another, the real Guki side. The first clone managed to block both of the Naruto's attacks, but the second copy, a fire chakra duplicate, was less successful. One of the axes clipped his left leg, and the weapon inhaled the energy that had formed the clone, preventing even the fire clone's inherent self-immolation. And the third Guki was merely an insubstantial clone. The siphons passed right through his attempted defense, destroying him. For a moment there 3 Gukis against 10 Narutos, though the last Earth clone Namikaze managed to clip a shadow clone Uzumaki. But without the siphons, Guki whispered thoughtfully, and then held the real axe before him. Siphon, reconsute. The red ribbon in the axe seemed to darken, as if drawing in light instead of producing it. Simultaneously, each copy of the weapon reverted into the cheap kunai from which it had been formed. The siphon returned to glowing, as it gained the chakra its subordinate selves had stolen. Unconcerned, the Narutos grabbed Gukis in sets of 3. Hinata, now, 9 brash voices shouted in chorus. 8 trigrams, empty palms. Hinata destroyed 2 of the Gukis and the Narutos that had them pinned with a blast of force from each hand. And rather than wait for her friend to recharge and waste 3 friendly clones, Sakura put one of her arrows through the last Guki duplicate's throat. The 3 real teens turned to face Guki, and the 3 surviving Naruto copies stepped forward as well. But despite the fact that they had defeated one of his self-proclaimed finishing moves and forced him to remove all the siphon duplicates, Naruto's uncle smiled at them with a satisfied look. Hinata's Byakugan picked up on a flow of chakra, leaving the red imprint of the axe and flowing into its owner. Even after I spent so much chakra on my clone brigade, 1/11 of your power would be enough to fill me back up, Naruto, the Raikage informed them happily, but let's reset a little, shall we? Ninja art, clone disrupt jutsu. The 3 shadow clones vanished, and the kunai they were carrying clattered to the stone floor. Looking around at the 30-some wedge-shaped daggers on the floor, Sakura started to wonder if she could put them to some use. Hinata and Naruto darted towards Guki again, and the medic drew her third-to-last arrow, keeping the discarded blades in the back of her mind. Naruto's foot snapped up at Guki's left side as he liberated Kitsune from its scabbard once more. At the same time Hinata dropped low, aiming her glowing fingertips for Guki's knee and calf, while also positioning herself so if Guki dodged backwards, Naruto's leg would sail over her head. Instead, Namikaze caught Naruto's leg on his curled arm, taking the diluted damage to hold his position, and transferring the force into the leg the Hyuga heiress was targeting. His knee launched towards her nose, causing her gentle fist strikes to miss. Uzumaki's hand shot out. Due to their close positions he could not swing Kitsune, so instead he punched at Guki's thigh with the crosspiece. The Raikage grunted in pain as the point of the spiral leaf-shaped guard dug into his muscle, and his limb was pushed far enough to the side that he missed Hinata's head entirely. Pushing her back, Namikaze stomped his foot down, and, still cradling Naruto's right leg against his left arm, swung Siphon down at Hinata's head with his right hand. Kitsune snapped up to intercept, and the former Jinchuriki placed both hands on its hilt to match his uncle's superior strength. This left Uzumaki in an unsteady position, but Naruto did not dare adjust his stance. If I were to stop holding Uncle Guki's other arm in place with my leg, and he wouldn't be forced to lean against my leg to keep his balance. Naruto pondered the possibilities, and none of them favored Team Kakashi. Hinata scrambled back, and Naruto let his arms go loose. The resistance suddenly gone, Siphon dropped and bit into the floor. Naruto swung his staff blade up at Guki's chin, but the renegade vanished in a puff of smoke, and the pole weapon S through the chunk of rock that took his place. Uzumaki considered summon his weapon's extension again, but recognized that as soon as they exchanged blows again, he would be feeding their opponent more chakra. Guki appeared inside the newly formed gap in nearest pillar, and immediately leapt at his nephew again. Sakura scared, as the Raikage moved too fast for her to get a good bead on him. Namikaze was doing an admirable job of keeping his axe and his opponents in between himself and the archer. Tsunade's apprentice began to run down her list of genjutsu, and considered the kunai again. Guki hammered down on Naruto, and axe clanged repeatedly and violently on staff blade. Hinata trying to move closer again, but Namikaze drove her back with an offhand side thrust kick. What are you playing at? Naruto grimaced. The Tokujo was annoyed by the frequent, amateurish attacks, yet remained unable to counter. Haven't figured it out yet. Guki smiled confidently, continuing to swing wildly. Then his expression brightened as one of the deflections yielded a slightly different tone. There it is, I knew I heard it, the Reikage said happily, suddenly drawing his axe back. Ninja art, critical cleave jutsu, Guki stated, suddenly out more firmly, both hands on Siphon's grip. Naruto raised Kitsune to block, planting his feet for the powerful blow. The two weapons met with an echoing tone, and for a moment the two men stood the ground, struggling. Hinata ran forward, unsure if she would try to capitalize on Guki's locked state, or try to help Naruto. Sakura sighted on Guki's temple and drew the arrow back to full extension. Before either woman could attack, a new metallic groan reached their ears. Hinata's eyes widened, as her Byakugan caught what was happening. With the ringing of a melancholy bell, Kitsune snapped, and Siphon continued down into Naruto's right shoulder. A firm knock on the door caused Hiruzen Sarutobi to turn away from the window, a thoughtful expression still on his face. He took one more long draw from his pipe, and then extinguished it, remembering and respecting his former student's preference. Enter, the third Hokage answered, and the door swung inwards. Behind it stood a muscular young man with piercing blue and crusy hair that skirted the line between blonde and brown. His features were young, and though he was already well into his 20s, he could easily pass for 16 or 17. Like most other Leaf Jonin, he wore a military vest and covered his forehead with the village's shield. Unlike any other ninja the Hokage had met, this young man wore black jeans for his uniform. And most distinguishing was the large, single-bladed battle axe strapped to his back. Guki, thank you for coming, the older ninja greeted him cordially, please, come in and have a seat. Thank you, Sarutobi-sensei, the elder Namikaze complied, closing the door behind him and slipping into the chair across from his third mentor. Do you have a mission for me, sir? Guki asked respectfully, carefully bottling his hope and anticipation. In a manner of speaking, the Hokage smiled mysteriously, but if you choose to accept it, it will be the last mission I ever give you. I've come back from suicide missions before, the younger man pointed out with a small measure of pride. Indeed you have, but the issue this time is not the risk involved. Rather, the duration of the mission is the problem. Guki nodded his understanding, a wry grin touching his lips. He had been scouted for the Anbu and for the Guardian Shinobi 12, but had turned down both positions. He did not particularly like or trust the leader of the Black Ops, nor did he want the boring life of a personal bodyguard, even to the daimyo. Is it Lord Hisoka? Guki asked, or Danzo again? Neither, Sarutobi answered, and the young man could not hide a sigh of relief. Then his eyes narrowed as he considered what was left. So, some other sort of long-term mission, Namikaze pondered, is it undercover work, or am I crossing the ocean again? Again, neither, Hiruzen shook his head, the village certainly could not afford to have you gone for so long. Are you going to tell me, sensei? Guki asked with mock ire, or are we going to sit around all day playing guessing games? All right, I have strung you along long enough, the third raised his hands in defeat. Then his expression grew thoughtful. By the standards of our profession, I am not a young man, Sarutobi began, though the life expectancy of a shinobi has been increasing steadily since the founding of the hidden villages, the fact remains that most ninjas die before their 40th birthdays. My teammates and I, along with Hiyashi Hyuga, are the only survivors of the 5th graduating class of the Konohagakure Academy. The entire 6th class is gone. I hope for a day when shinobi can live almost as long as civilians, but I don't think that will happen within my lifetime. I would like to see that as well, Guki agreed, then prompted with a hint of confusion, no offense, sensei, but what does this have to do with why you summoned me? I won't be around forever, the Hokage explained, and even if I live to be 90, I will eventually lose my Jonin standing, and with it a measure of respect and authority. I don't think that will happen for many years, sensei, his students said confidently, I still doubt I could defeat you in a one-on-one battle. You are a skilled liar, Guki, but you don't fool me, Hiruzen chuckled, by the time you left my tutelage, you were more than a match for me. Which is part of my point. The village needs a leader with both the strength to rein in this unruly mob, and the wisdom to protect them. And I think you possess both of those qualities in abundance. Sensei, are you? Guki Namikaze, I wish to offer you the position of the 4th Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves. The young man's control slipped, and he goggled openly at his third teacher. Then he snapped his mouth shut and shook his head wryly. That's a pretty bad joke, sensei, Guki told him, and maybe a little cruel. I am totally serious. Sarutobi's smile carried warmth and amusement. But, Namikaze stuttered, however his protest in his throat as he considered it. The third watched him closely, trying to read his reaction. Emotions warred on the younger man's face as he tried to wrap his mind around the implications of being the leader of the Konohagakure. Pride wrestled with doubt, refereed by logic. 1 minute passed, then another, and ultimately the clock had moved forward by 5 clicks before the muscular Jonin spoke again. Can I have a day, or possibly 2, to think about it? Guki finally said. I would be disappointed if you didn't, Hiruzen nodded sagely. Namikaze stood slowly to leave, and there was an unfamiliar clumsiness to his movements, almost as if he had suffered a concussion. As he reached the door, Guki turned back to his teacher with a thoughtful expression. Do you ever regret becoming the Hokage, Sarutobi-sensei? The youth asked carefully. Almost every day, the older man answered honestly, and yet there isn't a single day where I would take back my choice if I could. Guki bobbed his head once in understanding and thanks, and then slipped silently from the room. The third watched with a knowing smile. Namikaze paced the floor of his apartment anxiously. I'm not ready, he told himself aloud. But there's no one better for the job, he argued. Would the rest of the village accept me? He paused, unable to answer himself. If I say no, who will Sarutobi-sensei ask instead? The side of him that wanted to accept took a different track. Guki considered that. Danzo obviously wanted the job. Any of the major clan leaders would have both built-in support and automatic opposition. And, of course, there were Sarutobi's other 3 students, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru. The crease in Guki's brow deepened at that thought. Orochimaru, sensei, wants the job, Namikaze pondered, he has as much as said so. But he's a bit unstable. Give him access to the authority and sealed knowledge of the Hokage, and he might not be able to rein in his darker tendencies. But would that be a bad thing, in the long run? He kept his argument silent this time, as if afraid someone might overhear him. I could help him get the position, and then distance myself from him officially, while watching him. As the Hokage, I have no doubt Orochimaru will come up with some amazing jutsu, that will make the village stronger. And when he crosses too far over the line into forbidden techniques or human experimentation, I can reveal him. If he can last a few years, I will be able to gain more support in the village. And if I am the hero that reveals the Orochimaru's crimes, I will be a natural choice to become the 5th Hokage. Then we can use some of the safer, saner things that Serpent will develop, and make the Leaf Village the most powerful of the 5 great villages. Guki took a deep breath, to steady himself. The plan had potential, but he began to attack it from all angles. What if Orochimaru went too far, too fast? Or what if he failed to give in to the temptation? What if someone else uncovered the snake's immoral experiments first? He ran through a list of possible hiccups, and devised basic, theoretical countermeasures for each potential pitfall. Once he was satisfied he had most of the contingencies covered, he began to prepare for bed, anxious for the next day to arrive. As Namikaze slipped into his futon, one last thought echoed around in his head. I will go down in history as the one who made the Leaf Village the strongest of all the shinobi villages. Guki was already standing outside the Hokage's office, when Sarutobi arrived the next morning. The fire shadow paused, and then shook his head with a wry smirk. The energy of youth, Hiruzen thought enviously. Good morning, Guki, the professor greeted his student. Good morning, Sarutobi-sensei, the young man answered evenly. Hiruzen was surprised the elder Namikaze's brother did not seem more nervous or enthusiastic. He remembered that, despite his training, he had barely been able to contain himself when he responded to his predecessor and teacher. Sarutobi unlocked his office, and then paused just inside the door. I presume this is in reference to the offer I made yesterday, the Hokage noted confidently, please come in. Guki nodded slightly and followed his mentor inside. The third closed the door and took his seat behind his desk, staring out at the young man. Have you come to a decision? Only now did the younger Jonin show a hint of emotion, tiny wisps of anxiety and regret wafting off him. I have, Guki said simply, his voice belying his body language in its neutrality. I considered your offer very carefully. But I am afraid I must decline. I am not yet ready to become the Hokage. Sarutobi frowned in surprise. He had spent enough time with the elder Namikaze's brother to know that the young man was not lacking in ambition. And there was no guarantee that the next Hokage would offer the position of fifth to Guki, if he lived that long. May I ask why? I worry that the village won't follow me, due to my youth, Namikaze answered. I think you might be underestimating yourself, Hiruzen responded, sensing the truth in his words, and you would have my support as a village elder. You might be right, but I can't help feeling there are too many others who are better suited. Who are as skilled as I am, or close to it, but have more experience and are more established in the Jonin Council. They might resent being passed over, and cause trouble. And, also, Guki continued quickly, with a small, chagrined smile, I'm not sure I'm ready to have a desk job just yet. I enjoy field work, and I don't think I've reached my peak. I can do more good for the Leaf completing missions than assigning them. Sarutobi nodded. He had more than once expressed some jealousy of the freedom and adventure a field agent was afforded. If you have made up your mind, I doubt I will be able to budge you, the third said sadly, though I would remind you, this could well be a once-in-a-lifetime chance. I understand, Guki sighed, but I can only follow my conscience. I thought so. Well, thank you for your honesty. Despite the dismissal in the Hokage's words, Guki did not leave. Instead he took a deep breath, and spoke again. If we are talking about honesty, and following your heart, there is something I must request permission to add, Namikaze stated. Hiruzen's lips narrowed thoughtfully, and he nodded for his protege to continue. I think you are overlooking the most obvious choice for the fourth Hokage, if you came to me first. Oh, Sarutobi's eyebrows rose in amused amazement, and who would that be? Orochimaru-sensei, Guki answered, remembering to add the honorific he had started to distance himself from the previous evening. Really, I'm curious to hear why you would say that. Orochimaru is, as I said, older and more established than I am, Namikaze explained, he has more leadership experience. And he is much smarter than I am. And I may have trained under you, but Orochimaru-sensei was truly your apprentice, so he will be viewed as a direct line of succession. And he was my first and most influential sensei, so I can't help but think that whatever you see in me could just be a minor reflection of Orochimaru-sensei anyway. Why not Tsunade or Jiraiya then? Hiruzen prompted, enjoying the minor debate, much of what you just said applies to both of them as well. I have not spent much time with Jiraiya-san, the youth answered, but from what I have heard from my brother, and seen around the village, I doubt very much that the Kunoichi of the Leaf would support Jiraiya-san as Hokage. More likely, they would all revolt. Sarutobi chuckled briefly in agreement. And I think Tsunade-sensei would make a fine Hokage, but she would never accept the position. She would think she was trampling Nawaki's dreams. Very well, the third nodded, unable to counter the Jonin's observations, I will take your suggestion under consideration. Guki smiled openly, and nodded his understanding. Minato, the elder Namikaze's brother, stomped into the Hokage's office without waiting for permission to enter. Sarutobi's eyes flared in anger at the disrespect, but he reined in his temper, and gave his student some leeway. Guki's reaction was not entirely unexpected by the third. You seem upset, Hiruzen said calmingly, I know this must come as a shock to you, but you did turn me down, and I have my reasons. But, he's my younger brother. If I'm not old enough for the job, he certainly isn't. Age was your argument, the Hokage reminded him, and it was the one I had the greatest issue with. Minato is only 2 years younger than you, and like you, has been a working shinobi for more than half of his life. He's too nice. He will be more interesting in protecting our people than in completing our missions, Namikaze argued, and he doesn't have the strategic mind to lead the village. He might be able to direct his own team. But deciding which teams to dispatch and which to hold back. I worry, well, I just worry. His kindness is not a weakness, it is why the shinobi of the village will follow him. And it does not mean he will not be able to make the tough choices when he has to, Sarutobi countered sternly, and he will not become the Hokage right away. He will have 6 months to a year to learn the offices and responsibilities of the job, including strategy. And Minato will have advisors to help as well, myself included. What about Orochimaru-sensei? Guki wondered if the third was toying with him. Did he figure out my plan? The sandy-haired Jonin wondered. Orochimaru may be intelligent and strong, but many in the village are suspicious or even frightened of his inclination towards necromancy and similar forbidden jutsus. I worry that with the power of the Hokage, Orochimaru might lose what little self-control he still has when it comes to his research. Guki inclined his head bitterly, unable to deny the core of his plot. He sighed harshly, and looked back up at his third teacher. I have some vacation saved up, Namikaze stated flatly, suddenly feeling the need to distance himself from the Leaf Village, for multiple reasons. That is a bit of an understatement, the Hokage noted dryly, you haven't taken a single day off since your appointment. You are the reason the elders have been suggesting we put a cap on the amount of time off a shinobi can retain. Well, I would like to begin using it, starting now. You might miss Minato swearing in, Hiruzen noted, and when Guki's eyes tightened, he sighed and added, but I suppose that is the point. Alright, how much time do you want to take off? All of it. All of it. The younger man nodded. Guki, do you realize that you have almost 17 months saved up? I need time to think, Guki offered contritely, to come to terms with having to follow orders from my crybaby younger brother. I doubt I will be gone for that long, but I also don't want to say I'll only be gone for 1 or 2 months, only to have my scheduled leave time run out while I am still troubled. I'll do what I can, the third offered sympathetically, but I will not be in charge the entire time, and the new Hokage may see fit to recall you. Also, there might come a time when the village needs you. I understand. And I will always be there for the Leaf. Thank you, sensei. Guki Namikaze left Hiruzen Sarutobi's office, not knowing he would never see his friend and mentor again. Guki could not help but let out a sigh of relief as he entered the dining room of the tavern and inn that served as the hub of the small, unnamed town. He had been roughing it in the 3 weeks since he left the Konohagakure. And while his shinobi skills were more than adequate to let him survive indefinitely in the wild, there was no match for the minor comforts like indoor plumbing and a clean mat under his futon. Or even better, a real bed and a proper bath. Good afternoon, the girl acting as the server in the restaurant said overly happily as she turned to greet him. She had thin, off-blonde hair, though more yellow-green than his own brownish coloring. Judging by her height and build, he estimated she was around 13 years of age. In a larger town, she would have probably been in school, but in the smaller, tucked-away community, helping out at her family's store took precedence. Her purple eyes were unconsciously shadowed. He could tell the girl had an unfortunate past, and was ruled by darker emotions that she tried to hide for the sake of her job. But as her violet orbs raked across his body, that facade fell away. She glared at him with open contempt. Sit where you like, she snarled, backing away like a wounded animal. Once she had gotten a table between them, she half turned and yelled, "Hey, old man. It's one of those. You come serve him and I'll clean or something." An older gentleman emerged from the back as the girl finished retreating. He smiled weakly, and hurried over to Namikaze. "Ah, yes, just you then," he said in a wispy voice. Guki nodded, and the man showed him to a table next to one of the large, front windows. But the Leaf Jonin never took his eyes from where the teen had vanished. "I must apologize for Narumi," his host told him, realizing his distraction. "She has a bit of a sore spot when it comes to shinobi." "Oh," Guki prompted, still moderately surprised despite the girl's reaction, "why is that? If it is not too rude of me to ask." Well, her dad, gods grant his soul rest, had a certain personal grudge that caused him to frequently badmouth your profession, the innkeeper started to explain, and Narumi took his words to heart. But then, a few months ago, a wounded stone ninja wandered into our village. Narumi has worked odd jobs to get by since her dad's death, so she was elected to care for our guest while he recovered. That Itsuki was a handsome one, and despite her prejudice, Narumi was quite taken with him. And she did what some girls do, to ensnare a boy they fancy. If you know what I mean. Guki nodded slowly, a kernel of disgust at his so-called colleague growing in his belly. And after Itsuki got better, he just vanished one night. Which might not have been so bad on its own, except he also stole Narumi's most precious possession, a keepsake locket from her mother. Also took all the cash I had in the register. Since then, she's hated ninjas more than her dad ever did. She'll tell anyone who will listen how she was wronged, and how she'll get him someday. Which is why I don't mind telling you, if you weren't wearing that vest and shield, she would have told you anyway. For what it's worth, I apologize on behalf of ninjas everywhere, Guki said in genuine embarrassment, and I hope that one day, Narumi-chan gets her revenge. Don't go saying that in front of her, the innkeeper said quickly, The last thing she needs is any sort of encouragement to run off and get herself more hurt. Namikaze dipped his head and eyes in acknowledgement. Then he carefully asked, "What can you tell me about that locket?" "Guki Namikaze dono." The Jonin tensed when an unfamiliar voice called out his name. Guki had not sensed anyone coming, and being surprised was highly disconcerting to the master shinobi. His guard up, he turned slowly to meet his ambusher. And saw nothing, which only increased the Leaf Ninja's anxiety. "Down here, Namikaze dono." The voice stated again. Guki turned his attention down, and saw a lumpy brown toad, about the size of a large house cat. Except this amphibian was more or less pedal, and had a scroll case strapped to his back. After a moment of searching his memories, the wanderer realized the toad must be one of his brother's summoned familiars. "What can I do for you?" the human asked carefully. "I have a message for you, Namikaze dono." "What is the passphrase?" "Passphrase." Guki sighed, throttling Minato in his mind. "I don't have a passphrase." "That is correct. Hand." Guki held up his left hand, palm out, and the toad scanned it. Namikaze was not sure what the amphibian was looking at or for, but after a few seconds of close scrutiny, the small familiar nodded sharply. "Very good," the messenger noted. He then slipped the tube off his back, and passed it to the human. Guki slid out the single sheet of paper and quickly scanned it. "Anarchy," Minato's familiar script wrote, "I am not sure where this letter will find you, or if you are aware of our status. But the ninja world is at war. We are fighting the stone and the cloud, with the grudging help of the sand. For now the mist is staying neutral, but many expect that, if either side shows weakness, they will intervene. The village needs your power now, so we can end this battle as quickly as possible. I know you are upset, but please, return to the village. Your brother, Minato." Guki snorted as he incinerated the message with a burst of fire chakra. "If he wants me to come back, he should just order me as the Hokage," the elder Namikaze brother said, as much for himself as for the toad. "Minato-kun isn't the Hokage, Namikaze dono," the messenger told him. Guki noted the difference in forms of address, and for a moment wondered if the familiar was buttering him up. Then he remembered the Toad clan's structure, and that Minato was part of it, while he was just a client. "Really?" the human prompted, setting aside that distraction. "Yes," the Toad nodded. He finished his training, but the war started before he could officially be appointed. The humans decided it was better not to have a shift in leadership right now. So Minato-kun is acting as field commander, while Sarutobi-sama remains the Hokage and overall general. "Well, tell the field commander that I am on vacation, and only the Hokage can override it. And despite that, I'm still assisting, in my own way." The amphibian nodded, and then vanished. Guki turned back to his original route, starting across the grass field to the farming town at the edge of his visual range. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.